tough statewide, and we'll highlight some of that. Grade 6, again, we see those stairs, a nice increase here. And then grade 7, we outgrew the state at the 7th grade. Again, just from where we were back in 2021 at 6.1 to be up to 20.8. So some real growth here. 8th grade, relatively flat from a 3.0 to a 2.9. We did, however, test a lot more students at the grade 8 level than we have in the past. And as a result of that, the students that took algebra early in the 8th grade, their proficiency rate increased from 49 to 61%. So, making sure that we're doing a better job targeting those students that were accelerating really helped those students shine.
I'm sorry, do you mean that kids that were taking algebra took the New York State test?
The kids, yes. So the kids in the 8th grade have an opportunity to either take the 8th grade assessment or the algebra regents to count as their state assessment. And of the students that were taking algebra, 61% of those in the 8th grade were able to score at the proficient level.
But it was that a very small percentage of the algebra students? Because my understanding was the majority of them take the regents.
Yeah, they do take the regents, and the regents counts. It's not included in the numbers here, but I did want to mention it because we have like close to like 400-ish kids take the algebra regents in that neighborhood, but it was about 130 or so less kids than we typically have take that regents.
So I'm really confused as to why. So because when my son was in 8th grade,
yeah,
they all just took the regents. No one took the state test.
Right, but you need to be prepped for that. In other words, you need to be accelerated in algebra in order to sit for the algebra regents. Not all of our students are accelerated in algebra.
Oh, so they're in the algebra class. A teacher
Correct.
might say, I need you to take New York State test.
Right. They'll say, so any student that's taking the New York State algebra course in the 8th grade would take the regents in lieu of the 8th grade assessment.
Right.
Right.
That's what I was just going to say.
So I totally understand that that's why, because the kids that are taking algebra in 8th grade tend to be accelerated, and those are the kids that would be getting 3s and 4s in the New York State test, which is why the score goes down so dramatically.
Correct.
But I thought that what you were saying was some of those algebra kids are taking the New York
No,
State test.
what I'm saying is this year compared to the year before, we tested about 130 or so less students on algebra. So we didn't accelerate as many kids.
Got it.
And
I misunderstood what you said. I apologize.
Right. But in doing so and get better selection of the right students to accelerate in algebra, our proficiency level amongst the 8th graders taking algebra went from 49% to 61. Yeah.
So the regular math assessment was what? Take out the algebra. What's the regular math assessment? Scores for that grade.
2.9% proficient.
So that doesn't include the algebra in it?
That's correct.
Yes, so all the top performers in 8th grade.
I get it, but I'm just looking at 5th, 6th, and 8th grade having very small strides, even though you said they would be small last year. I'm just looking at it, some of it falling, some of it going up, but then compelled with some of the other information that we're given during this work session, I'm kind of confused.
About which piece?
About rigorous instruction. And algebra would be a part of rigorous instruction.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about last year or year before last having a computer science course that we tried to get in, but not enough students took algebra to be able to qualify as a prerequisite for that. So when we talked about 8th grade algebra and middle school algebra, I thought that in order to get them prepared, we would start adding that to 8th graders' ability to be able to take it so that they could start being able to prepare for things like computer science that has a prerequisite to have algebra. So I'm confused now because it seems like we got not as many kids taking algebra when the piece was to get as many as possible included in this rigorous instruction that would have critical thinking and other things. So I'm just confused. I'm confused.
and again, I think we got to sort out that question in general. But what I would start off saying would be the reason that we cut back on the number of taking algebra because of the lack of success some of the kids were having because they were overwhelmed with the content and with the curriculum. So by cutting back, we actually increased proficiency for those kids, not denying access, but it's more about what's the best fit and who could be successful in it.
Right. And I
I
see
get what
it,
you're
that's a
saying,
that's a
but it still
philosophical
seems
thing.
like we didn't
We
add.
could have added a lot more students.
I mean,
That would have
access
been
and equity
less
is two different
successful.
things. So I'm just
Yeah.
trying to find out why it wasn't equitable.
Nobody said it wasn't equitable. It's just who are the right kids. It's not. So I wouldn't put the equity question there.
and I think too, as we get more and more of our students at the seventh grade level proficient, we have a larger and larger group of students that are appropriate to accelerate algebra.
And what's the New York State rate?
We'll get to that in a couple of slides. Again, this is students scoring at level ones. And so again, good news is that we're seeing a decline in the number of students scoring at level one, at third grade, at fourth grade, at fifth grade, at sixth grade, at seventh grade, and in eighth grade. So again, across the board amongst our tested students, we're seeing a decline at every single grade level in the number of students scoring at level one. So this is what we see when we look at ourselves kind of compared to New York State. It is being that the next gen standards is a relatively new test. What you're going to see is you're going to see New York State try to bring the exams into more of a vertical alignment. And so they're going to move the cut points a little bit over these first couple of years. And so what we saw, New York State didn't move on the third grade, but we gained 3 percentage points. New York State at the fourth grade, they gained 4%, but so did we. At fifth grade, they made the test harder, dropped the whole state by a point, and it dropped us by a point. For Math 6, they went up by 3, we went up by 2. At grade 5, they went up by 5%. We matched that at 5%, and then even at the eighth grade level.
That's 0% at the eighth grade level.
Yeah, 0% change from the previous year. Yeah. And then reduction in student scoring at a level one. We kind of put the New York State and the Big Five up here. So we dropped 13 percentage points in the percentage of students scoring at level one. That outperformed Rochester, outperformed New York State, outperformed Buffalo and Yonkers. So again, really trying to get kids to improve. As we look at ELA, again, ELA was at 48% last year, proficient, it's 46% proficient. We're relatively flat this year. Again, if we look at the details of our particular district, we're at 19.7 last year, we're at 19.6 this year. So we're within 1/10 of a point or relatively flat. When we look at where the students are achieving, our level ones went up, that's 58.1%. Level twos are down, level threes are down, and level fours went up a couple of tenths. Again, when we take a look at a chart like this, kind of what happened with the state, ELA went down for New York State, went up for us. So again, we're kind of closing the gap on New York State. We did that at both third grade and fourth grade. Fifth grade, we mimicked the state. Sixth grade, we mimicked the state. We made some nice gains at seventh grade, and we gave them back at the eighth grade level. Okay. Again, this early primary, this grades 3 and 4, this is where we're seeing sort of our gap closing. Again, when we look at it by grade level, there's the stairs that we talk about and the improvement at grade 3. You see an improvement at grade 4. The fifth grade went down statewide, as did sixth grade. There's our jump at seventh grade where we outgrew New York State. And then here's the decline at eighth grade. But it's important to note that that seventh grade cohort actually grew when it went from seventh grade to eighth grade. And we're going to take a kind of a unique snapshot, and I need to orient you to this slide just a little bit. The blues at the end are kids that score level fours. These are level threes, and where our students fall on level threes in the green. These are level twos, and these are level ones. And this is following the sixth grade cohort of 2023 to their seventh grade results in 2024. To give you an idea of what we're asking of kids, if I scored just proficient here and I didn't improve, I'm a level two the following year. That I have to move in order to remain proficient. If I was on the edge of being level one and level two, now I'm definitely a level one. And even our students that were scoring right at the very end, high level fours, that's now the cutoff between a level three and a level four. So as those students transition from grade 6 to grade 7, it's much more difficult for those kids to actually show proficiency. And the thing that you notice when you look at a chart like this is that these peaks get flattened out, and that all the students that were over here got pushed to the right. And so we're seeing that improvement, that even though they may not get out of a level one, and we have more of the test at a level one, we're seeing improvement where we're seeing the kids that were here get pushed to the right and improve. So that's good to know. As we look at seventh grade to eighth grade, again, we're following that cohort of kids. You can see we have 50s in here. We have 55, we have a 50, we have 53, we have 57, we have no 50s here. So we have flattened the top of that curve and we have moved the kids here to the right. Again, if we maintained, I'm now a level two. It's just about as easy to score a level three. It's one question harder to get me to a level four. But again, we're pushing the kids to the right on that scale. And if we look from eighth grade to eighth grade, we said, well, eighth grade, when we looked at year at eighth grade, our proficiency wasn't where it was a year ago. That's because this group was proficient last year. That group is now a level two this year. Right? The group that was a level two is now considered a level one.
Are the numbers on the bars their actual
Students.
It's the number of students. Okay.
Yeah. At the raw score. So this kind of laid out on a raw score, sort of segmented by raw score. And then we've inserted and color coded where those cutoffs are. So you can see the state is going to play where these cutoffs take place. And that's going to have some influence on our numbers. And if we ask kids to be scoring 3 and 4 questions better on an exam from year to year, we're going to see some movement from those from year to year. Okay, and this is, again, percentage of kids scoring at a level one. And again, we see improvement at grade 3. I don't necessarily see an improvement from year to year at grade 4, but when I follow this cohort from year to year, I do see improvement at the cohort level. And same thing at the grade 7 and 8 that we were looking at, even though we knew that test got harder by a couple of questions, if I follow that grade 7 cohort down, almost 10 percentage points better than we were a year ago. So again, that's all those kids in that level one moving to the right. And so just a quick summary, we do see an overall improvement in proficiency in mathematics. We continue to see a decrease in the number of students scoring at level one. And again, we continue to close the gap both in ELA and math when we compare ourselves to the statewide scores.
Questions?
I emailed mine.
Yep.
Y'all gonna need some time to answer mine.
Yep, same.
And I know that at the last work session, we had some guests come up and talk about improvements to our chronic absenteeism. And so So if you'll indulge me for just a minute, I'm a charts and graphs guy, so I'll put some charts and graphs up. This is elementary school, so we're just looking at elementary schools. I mean, the news when it comes to absenteeism in this district is improving leaps and bounds. And you can see this is our last year in the blue. We're consistently week on week. Our students are attending at a higher percentage that they have in the past. The number of students with satisfactory attendance, that's 95% or higher, is well above where we were a year ago, and 2 years ago, with a 9% improvement over those 2 years. When we look at our K-8 buildings, we're seeing the same thing. Again, with the blue bar, our percentage attendance consistently higher than we were a year ago. More of our students showing up in the satisfactory range. Middle schools, same thing, consistently higher all the way across. 44.9% satisfactory attendance. We're, five percentage points ahead of where we were a year ago. And high school is probably the most dramatic. Again, consistently higher. This dip that we see here is SAT day. And the high school's doing something different with the way that we administer the SATs. Had a significant impact on that week's attendance and has kept us well higher. Look at the difference, 32.8 to 47.2 when we talk satisfactory attendance. So again, we see it in the percent attended. We see it in a decrease in our chronic absenteeism. And with more kids sort of building that cushion at the satisfactory level as the school year goes on, hopefully our trend will continue. We are a couple of days ahead of where we were in the previous years. So when we get to 60 days, it'll take another day to become chronically absent. We'll actually see another good jump at the 60-day mark. So good news all the way around, but I thought I would share quickly.
In terms of the first presentation, I just want to say for the math, obviously 16% is not something that we should be celebrating, but I think that it's really important just to say thank you. And they're improving more than 9 points in the course of 3 years is significant. And as I was saying to the superintendent, if in 1 year there was a 30% increase, I would be suspicious about what that is about. I mean, incremental change is a real thing. I think that the next presentation is going to maybe shed some light onto why ELA is holding steady. But in terms of math, it seems like we have a very, very, very long way to go, and we owe it to the students, but we are moving in the right direction. So thank you to everyone in the district that's helping to make that happen.
Brittany. Next presentation. Please.
You was happy about that.
Hmm?
Talking to Karen, I don't know how she was happy about that.
I'm not saying I'm happy, but I think acknowledging a 9-point increase in performance. I mean, we've got to thank our teachers.
So we get to the next presentation and they say that not all groups is getting, not all teachers are. So I'm just saying.
Good evening, commissioners. Good evening, superintendent. Good evening, community. Want to introduce the Hanover Research Group team who led our instructional audit. They're going to be sharing their findings. We wholeheartedly believe most appropriate for them to share what their findings are, and then in a subsequent presentation on a different day, we'll share our next steps, what we've been doing, how we're responding to what we've learned from the audit. So look forward to sharing that with you in a future meeting. So I am going to introduce, I think, Matt and Scott. You're both here. Great.
We are.
Matt
Good to
Ragone,
see you.
Scott Bird. Thank you. We will turn it over to you. Scott, do you have sound as well? We can just test.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we're able to hear both of you.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Matt, I think you're going to kick us off. I'll get our slide deck up.
Yep, if you launch the deck. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dr. Matt Ragone. I'm the Senior Director of K-12 Research here at Hanover Research, and I'm glad to be here with you this afternoon. I'm joined by Dr. Scott Ratchford. He's our advisor for K-12 Research and Professional Services and leader of the research team that did this work for Syracuse City that we're going to review today. You don't have to read all of our biography, but just as a little bit of context, in addition to research, my background is K-12 public education. My first career was a high school social studies teacher administrator. I was a high school principal for a while before retiring to do research. So, Scott, would you like to say hello?
Good evening. I do know some of you. I appreciate the time. Superintendent Davis, appreciate the opportunity. Chief Britton, it's been really a pleasure to work with the team. The team has been very open with us, really opened their doors and all of their resources and invited us in really as good thought partners and objective researchers to be able to do this work. So thank you to all of you. And just a quick background on who I am so that you all know who's in the room with you. In addition to the work I've been doing with Hanover as a research advisor. I have a 36-year career in public ed, teaching, school psychology, and then building and administration before central office work, and a great deal of that time spent in teaching and learning. So this is work that's near and dear to my heart. So good to see you all.
Thanks, Scott. So the goal of our partnership with Syracuse City over the past year has been to conduct a comprehensive instructional review. So all districts that are dedicated to continuous improvement know that no matter how good they are, they can always improve. And the key is to look for specific areas of improvement through scientific mixed methods approaches so the district can invest smartly in areas that need improvement. So that's our goal. Therefore, excuse me, Hanover and Syracuse City have partnered to study math and ELA curricula and how it's implemented in the classroom. The presentation will start with a brief background. Then Scott will talk about how we undertook our investigation of math and ELL curricular frameworks and how we studied the implementation of instruction. And finally, our conclusions and recommendations will wrap up the report. So just a little bit of background. At Hanover, we're committed to a mixed methods approach to educational research because it looks at challenges or priorities from a lot of different lenses, from a lot of different directions. So, for example, with each step, we undertook this investigation of your math and ELA curricula in its implementation. It was grounded in secondary research, best practice research. This secondary research informs how we go about generating our primary research. So that's the mixed methods approach that we advocate. As you can see here on the slide, our secondary research reports included topics related to developing ideal curricula for all students, including the latest research in inquiry-based learning, cultural responsive and sustaining education, equity-based strategic plans, things like that. Also on this list is our primary research studies that rounded out our mixed methods approach. So you see the DEB diagnostic that we conducted in early 2024, the student outcomes dashboard. We collected and analyzed student outcomes data with that. So you know which students were doing well, which students need more support. And the document analyses are also on this slide. And then along the way, we developed a few tools the district can continue to use in follow-up. So for example, review rubrics and observation tools. So our research plan attempts to align your district goals with certain elements of the plan. So on this slide, you'll see the ELA and math curriculum reviews attempt to provide the district with an understanding of the quality of the curriculum materials and instructional frameworks. And the review of the instructional practices through classroom observations attempts to develop a picture for the district on how these frameworks work in practice, or how they are, if they are, being implemented with fidelity. All of this research provides an understanding where the challenges lie, identifies those high leverage areas where the district might invest to make significant improvements, And so I'll turn it over to Scott, who'll go over the details of our review.
So as Matt had said, this is part of a very comprehensive piece of work that's been ongoing with the district in reviewing both outcomes data as well as perception data. This portion of the work really focused on two big elements. One, taking a look at best practices of what is included in a high quality curriculum and a set of curriculum documents available to all who need to utilize those to drive instruction, and whether or not they are structured in a way to be clear to those that are the end users, that they provide good solid resources, scope and sequence. If you look at the bullets on the right, we also looked at their alignment to national and state standards and to rigor. We were also looking at whether or not they provide that comprehensive scope and sequence. Do they offer opportunities for differentiation? And these are right within the documents themselves. Good and solid curricula that, and according to the research and according to our best practice recommendations, should be self-evident. It should be that they are provided in a way that this information is available to those folks in the documents themselves. So that's what we actually reviewed. In addition, wanted to be sure that the documents reflected cultural responsiveness, that they offer teachers and leaders a clear understanding of how it is to engage learners across a range of demographics and identities. Usability, the degree to which they are really practical. There's a distinction in some curricula where curriculum documents really can make it challenging for those end users to be able to see applications. And so our efforts were to look also at how usable they are for end users. And then the elements of effective use of assessments, where the assessments are clearly defined and where it's clear to both teaching staff and to building and district level folks how it is that those assessments are going to be used to drive decisions and to drive instruction. So that was the sort of overview of how we looked at the math and ELA curriculum documents against that set of best practice research. What our team found in looking at the ELA curriculum in terms of what was effective, in pulling those apart one at a time, scope and sequence, what we found is that the ELA curriculum materials do provide clearly articulated grade level aligned sequences of instruction, and they reflect best practices such as gradual release and modeling. That was not consistent, but primarily across those documents, those were the strengths that we saw, or among the strengths that we saw. Secondly, as to cultural responsiveness, the ELA curriculum does include some bilingual texts, considerations for groupings of students and student choice, all elements which support cultural responsiveness, student engagement across a variety of demographics. It should be noted that in addition to what our reports, and the reports are available, found is that the district has been building a set of additional text resources that represent a variety of different student demographics and experiences. And so though we talk here more about bilingual text and student choice as some of the drivers in cultural responsiveness, there is a growing set of resources available to teachers around culturally relevant kinds of protagonists, storylines, and experiences. Usability, our team found that the resources and tools exist to support teachers in curriculum implementation, meaning that they are practical and they offer direct guidance for the teachers right within those documents themselves. Standards alignment, Syracuse's ELA curriculum is aligned to New York State Next Gen standards. That was a very clear strength. In terms of differentiation, the ELA curriculum articulates potential means for differentiation through scaffolds, meaning that there is a range of ways in which the information may be presented for students who may be grappling with the content, grappling with the skills, all the way up to some of the higher end learners. There is differentiation embedded into those documents, learning extensions included, and individual lessons for students requiring and needing tier 2 support. In addition, the curriculum documents include both, as far as assessment goes, unit and diagnostic assessments for progress monitoring that are included directly in the documents. In terms of the math strengths, again, starting with alignment, some of the major areas, some of the major types of curriculum documents included the Eureka and illustrative math approaches. And they had corresponding pacing guides to the New York Next Gen standards and provide multiple opportunities to deepen students' thinking and understanding. These are all built right into those documents. In terms of scope and sequence, the pacing guides provide a clear sequence of instruction. Rationales are also provided. It's important in terms of what the research shows that end users be provided not only with how and what it is that they'll be utilizing, but a rationale offers strength for people to be able to incorporate those methods into their own particular approach, and it increases the likelihood of buy-in. So rationales are provided for any deviation of pacing recommended by the curriculum products. In terms of differentiation, the curriculum products incorporate considerations for scaffolding and differentiation strategies directly within the documents. The Syracuse curricula, the math curricula, also offer various intervention strategies. For example, the SOAR strategy, small group interventions. There are some articulated ways in which teachers can directly utilize those documents to guide their efforts toward differentiation. In terms of cultural responsiveness, illustrative math emphasizes equity of voice and access by incorporating strategies to facilitate diverse student interactions, which increases the range of dialogue across student groups and allowance for students to approach the math problem solving and engaging in the challenges through group interactions, which is supportive of cultural understanding and is a very highly recommended strategy. Usability. Syracuse's math curricula provides clear guidance and resources that are easily accessible, user-friendly. Online resources for teachers and families, formative and summative assessments are aligned to standards and also available right within the documents themselves. As far as areas for development, cultural responsiveness is the first area that we had spoken about. And again, there's more detail in the reports themselves. We found that the Eureka curricula do not explicitly align each lesson with Syracuse's math mission of equitable learning experiences and celebrating students' assets. The more of that information can be embedded and offered in terms of clarity for how that can be managed, the more likely there is coherent practice. So the documents themselves do matter. These are not just guiding documents. They also offer their communication tools that provide opportunities to help across a range of schools, levels, both vertically and horizontally, folks having understanding that is coherent. And so that's a recommendation. That was one of the areas for development, rather. In terms of scope and sequence, clear identification of best instructional practices throughout ELA in the curriculum was sporadic. While some grade levels had very clear direction and the scope and sequence was very well articulated, there were other levels which could benefit from greater clarity within the scope and sequence. And again, some of those details are available within the reports. In terms of assessments, the ELA curriculum assessments are not consistently included or clearly structured to track students' progress throughout learning progressions. There's clear research to indicate that formative assessments give teachers and support staff greater capacity to be able to take that pulse taking and to course correct instruction, not just at levels, not just in moments when there's a summative assessment, but throughout instruction. And so our team saw opportunities for some of those assessments to be added in where they aren't as clear or as consistently provided. Standards alignments, references to standards within Syracuse's ELA curriculum are inconsistently articulated in unit plans. I just want to be clear there. Our team found that there was clear alignment to the state standards, but within the documents themselves, that alignment wasn't always made so clear. And the reason that that's important is it allows teachers to be able to recognize where it is that the curriculum is offering a connection to some broader standards, and to be able to round out instruction around those standards and flex that instruction to be able to make sure they're looking at what the standards are calling for. And individual lessons and instructions and teacher resources are also inconsistently articulated. And then again, for the benefit of coherence, consistent practice, those were areas where our team felt like there could be greater clarity in those documents themselves. And then in regard to differentiation, the ELA curriculum resources and materials for explicit language, English language development and enrichment for advanced students, particularly, those were absent among some of the documents. And if we're going to be thinking about the broader sense of differentiation, our team believed that there is a need to add in what folks may be doing to enrich and enhance student understanding, particularly those students who are ready for it, that the teachers could be provided those resources directly within the documents. And then in order to, as Matt mentioned, we are a team and an organization that prides itself in mixed methods. We understand, and the research shows that the curriculum documents offer staff an understanding of what the expectations are. In order for us to help and be good, strong partners to the Syracuse team, we, in our discussions, felt like we recommended and it was agreed that it was important to look at fidelity of implementation and consistency of practice. And so it was agreed that we would come on site and visit classrooms and look at from the elementary grades up through secondary grades across a range of schools, look at where we saw consistencies of best practice and where we saw areas of growth, so as to offer back some guidance and direction about professional growth, coaching, support, so as to make sure that though there are expectations in the curriculum and in the professional development that's been provided, where there still needs to be consistent additional support and or professional growth to offer means of being able to really shore up some of those expectations. So we worked with folks from district office and visited near 80 classrooms in the fall of 2024, with the objective being to collect objective observational data on teachers how they're implementing instructional practices and to generally assess learning environments themselves. Oop, I'm sorry, didn't mean to click that so fast. In particular, our team, as with the approach that we take to all of our work, it's guided in best practices and guided by research. We were looking particularly at what that research indicates allows with the equity lens, allows the greatest number of students to be engaged and be provided with instruction that's going to support their needs, gauge their understanding in real time, and then be able to flex and support instruction to be able to meet the needs of the broadest number of students. And so we were particularly looking at instructional alignment to standards and rigor. Did we see teachers whose practices across that range of settings were utilizing instruction that does align directly to those standards and does offer supports for students to be pushed to the degree that is possible given their needs? Secondly, looking at effective practices in lesson delivery and classroom management. Those are related. We pull those apart a bit in terms of instructional practices. We looked at pacing. We looked at gradual release and other methodologies that allow for the greatest number of students to be able to grasp the concepts and skills being taught. Classroom management, in that we were looking for evidence that classes are, there's a high level of expectation for student learning, that there are spaces in which all students are feeling that these are their spaces to learn, that they are made to feel that the adults in the room are there to support their understanding and their growth. And so that those two pieces really go hand in hand. Evidence of student engagement. One of the things that we tried to do is to really look closely at, and in some cases we not only observed classes, we spoke to students about their understanding of what was being taught and why it mattered. Engagement, not just compliance, was something that we tried to look at. And then available resources, how well are the resources within the classrooms being utilized to maximize learning for all students? So in terms of effective strategies and practices, notably the classroom climate and culture, this is not universal, but these are trends, larger trends across those somewhat near 80 classrooms. It was notable that classroom climates and the cultures were welcoming, and they provided welcoming spaces, and they were environments that were conducive to learning and student engagement across the vast majority of those spaces. Secondly, there were consistent efforts to implement elements of accountable talk, and not just that set of practices. That's more a mathematics practice, but efforts made to engage students in expressing the thinking behind their learning, in being given opportunities by teachers to think through problem solving, given scaffolding such that they can access resources and ideas taught to be able to effectively grow their own learning. We saw efforts made by teachers to be able to implement those strategies, and the professional development seems to be clearly understood. There's levels of growth there that we'll talk about in a moment, but in terms of evidence that teachers are made aware of what those structures and systems are trying to do, and the language of and the elements of accountable talk were evident. Most activities were clearly designed to lead students towards mastery using grade level appropriate curriculum. So there's two pieces there: that the curricula itself, the materials themselves, instructional methods themselves were apparently aligned to the needs of the students at those grade levels and in the classes observed, and that there were efforts made to scaffold instruction to lead students to higher level of understanding and growth. Our team also saw evidence of significant opportunities to incorporate culturally responsive learning across classrooms. That was regardless of content area and regardless of level. And then finally, instructional strategies in the elementary and middle school classrooms were intermittently aligned to high leverage strategies to foster critical thinking. Now, I had mentioned that accountable talk approach was evident. As we moved across levels, though, there was sort of intermittent understanding of where there are opportunities there to let students grapple. There was evidence that the opportunities were given for students to own their own thinking and their own learning, but we see it as an area also for growth, and I'll add to that in a moment. So in terms of development, we saw that teachers needed to develop their capacity to more fully realize the potential of accountable talk strategies to support student metacognition and student reflection. So that's building on the point I was just trying to make, that our team saw that folks are offering some opportunities for students to express what their thinking is, but until there's a greater level of understanding across all teachers, there are some nuances there that opportunities by asking probing questions allow students to go and have that moment where they are working to try to find the solution or being prompted to use resources more effectively to get to those solutions. We saw some opportunities there for that to be expanded. And teachers are clearly trying to use the accountable talk strategies, but there's greater opportunity when staff reach a place where they see these as strategies, as opposed to where we saw a greater number of teachers who are using some of the stems and some of the language of accountable talk. There's going to be a greater upside once greater numbers of teachers understand the underlying goals of and the strategies, and they can apply those where they see those opportunities and the moments to really push students to higher places to be more independent in that work. Gaps are evident in student understanding of the purpose and relevance of activities to broader learning goals and standards. Again, we ask questions. What is the purpose of today's lesson? What are the objectives here today? And we saw a mix of students being able to access or express the understanding of what the purpose was. And there's a great deal of research to show that when students understand the objectives and the goals of a lesson, they're more likely to be able to apply the learning themselves. Culturally relevant texts, while available, did not across the classrooms visited fully represent the diversity of the student population. We know that in the resources that there's efforts being made to provide greater range of protagonists, storylines, lived experiences, and we know that's there in many of the curriculum documents and some of those resources, but we didn't see as much evidence as we believe would be desirable to be able to really allow students to see themselves across subject areas, grade levels, in the classrooms themselves. We saw some evidence, but we see it as an area for growth. And then finally, while we saw students demonstrating compliance in following classrooms routines and expectations, emphasizing engagement and higher order thinking through student-to-student discourse was minimal. We saw a slight leaning towards compliance over giving a little bit more autonomy to students to be able to own some of the discourse, own some of the student-to-student challenging, like Accountable Talk offers a number of ways in which students may challenge each other's thinking. There's growth areas there where I think that at the moment there seems to be there's definitely great classroom management strategies that we can see across the classrooms, but there's an area there for growth where providing good structures for students to be able to engage each other, challenge one another, and to independently grapple with those ideas, that compliance would drop down as a lower order when students are more highly engaged and when they see tools and strategies for being able to access learning themselves, that the compliance becomes a lower order need. And so there's some dynamics there at work where we believe that teachers get a greater handle on some of those strategies and practices. We will see a little bit of a lessening as that is an area of focus among some of the teaching staff. And so, Matt, I believe this was going to be you, correct?
Yeah, so we have just a couple of wrap-up slides here just to bring it home. In the end, and I won't belabor this so much because I think you have this presentation, and this is what Scott really has talked about. But just to highlight, we have in the end find that the district is doing quite well aligning ELA and math curricula with New York's next gen standards. The curriculum provides opportunities to promote student engagement and understanding. One challenge area, as Scott has mentioned in ELA in particular, is that piece on instructional differentiation. More consistent integration with ELA standards and more cross-grade references should improve instructional differentiation, which has the potential to really positively impact some of your most vulnerable student groups. Access to rigorous instruction for all student groups is also a challenge area, as it is with many districts across the country. We sometimes see this in the literature described as the excellence gap. It's a challenge for a lot of districts in other words, opening up opportunities to your highest levels of learning, your advanced coursework for all students could be a way to enhance your culture of creating high expectations for all students. And then finally, Scott, you got this one.
Yeah, so some of this we tried to cover in context with the findings, but in terms of instructional methods, while Syracuse is making great strides towards equitable evidence-based teaching, there's room, every district, as Matt said, that we work with has room for growth, but we saw room to enhance application of these. It's not an absence of these approaches, it's strengthening and bolstering these approaches. Inquiry-based learning was one area. While instructional methods, for example, project-based learning and curriculum frameworks, for example, expeditionary learning, include inquiry-based elements, observations suggest the need for additional rigorous learning to boost engagement and critical thinking skills. So it's not only the opportunities, it's the teaching methodologies to be able to support that approach. Differentiated instruction. While Syracuse ELA and math curriculum use differentiation strategies, like, for example, scaffolding and enrichment, but a focus on more personalized learning, more diverse teaching methods, and skill utilization of available resources was apparent. There is an area of opportunity and growth there as well. And then finally, culturally responsive and sustaining instruction. While we saw that Syracuse's curricula and resources reflect a robust effort, towards cultural responsive and sustaining instruction, more can definitely be done to consistently implement those practices in order to fully engage its diverse student body. So those were our bigger takeaways and findings and larger recommendations. Our reports offer more depth, but we're happy to take questions as any of the audience has for us.
Cool.
Were they specifically in there looking for accountable talk? Why came up as a focus? Was it meant to be a focus?
Scott, did you hear that question?
I did. Yeah. So sort of a two-part answer. The answer is yes and no. Yes, in that it is a strategy that was deemed, there's lots of research to show accountable talk really can increase the level of rigor, and that there's a great deal of evidence that shows that when students own their own learning and they're taught metacognitive strategies that are part and parcel of accountable talk, that there's greater levels of growth for more students across a range of learners. We were asked to look at those strategies which support student ownership of cognition and problem solving, but particularly there has been an effort made to teach around, provide support and resources around accountable talk. And so we were asked to pay particular attention to that as an approach, but more broadly, that approach to student autonomy and agency to problem solve, and accountable talk as a means to do so.
How were the different classrooms chosen? How did we choose which?
You hear that question, Scott?
Yeah. So
classes that would be observed.
So that was more of a local decision. What we pushed upon was that there be a range of, here's what we recommended, and the team clearly met our expectations, but I sort of share the answer with Chief Britton. We recommended that there be a range not only of grade levels, but across the district geographically. It's such a diverse community. It's such a large community. There's such a range of students' experiences across schools. One recommendation was that we make sure that we get out to hit a huge range of schools, which we did. We covered from north to south, east to west. And we also asked that we see classrooms which included a range of teaching styles, including co-taught classrooms which included a range of learners, and that we included, so we also didn't limit ourselves, though the curriculum review was ELA and math, because we were looking at teaching methodologies, we looked at and we asked for classes beyond those subject areas to see how these methodologies penetrated across all of the different types of instructions. So we visited CTE classrooms, we visited science classrooms, social studies classrooms, from K to 12. So that's what our experience was. We had guided that as the approach, and then the local team worked together to be able to fill in which schools, which classrooms, but it was a really diverse group of classrooms, subject areas, parts of town, types of expectations within the classroom setting.
Thank you. Matt? There-
Questions?
Yes.
It's
Outline.
I have two quick questions. The first one is, in terms of accountable talk, is that something that in a district that hadn't brought that up as a something to look for, would that be something that you would look for in an audit?
That's a great question. So we would, by definition, be looking for strategies to be able to support the highest level of rigor within the classroom possible. So we wouldn't call out accountable talk. There's a number of methodologies that really support students owning their own learning and independently being able to, not just independently, but having direct instruction and support for metacognitive strategies. And so built into our approach are lenses that are looking for those strategies. If you look at instructional frameworks, many of them look at levels of rigor. And when looking at levels of rigor, raising the bar of rigor for students alone is not enough. There needs to be systems for teachers to be able to understand that their job is not only to raise the bar, it's to teach students to be independent in their capacity to be able to grapple with higher levels of rigor. So we would look for evidence of rigorous materials, but also teaching methodologies that provide students with the skills, not just content specific skills, but thinking skills, problem solving skills that allow them to be able to independently approach learning, because those are transferable skills, whether they're in math or science, or for that matter, when they're out in the work world, the degree to which they learn those metacognitive strategies, that is absolutely built into what we look for in all of our curriculum audits and instructional audits.
Okay. And my second quick question is on I think slide 8, I think in what we were sent, the ELA curriculum effective elements, the first item, some ELA curriculum materials provide clearly articulated, et cetera, et cetera. I guess I was just looking for some clarity on the word some.
So the documents themselves provide a little bit more depth there, but what we saw is that it wasn't consistent. So you'll see that there's a rubric that we had utilized that it allows us to be able to rate the degree to which these ideas or these elements were present. We saw it present in a number of the curriculum documents, but in our recommendation that it would be consistently available across all. I can't come up with an exact number. I could look into some of that for you and provide you with a little more detail there. But it was not absent. It was evident throughout a number of the grade level documents, just not consistently. And so in order to provide clarity and coherence, our recommendation is that it be in all documents across all grade levels. So I'm sorry, I can't give you an exact number, but it was not consistent.
Thank you.
I just asked too, when you guys are looking at the curriculum documents, are you also looking at the pacing guides of how that curriculum is expected to be rolled out?
We are. We want to know the scope and sequence question is really an important one. When we review curricula, we see a range of ways in which districts unpack standards. But what the research shows and what our best practice research has found is that standards alone don't guide teachers clearly and don't offer a good understanding of, well, what is the pace at which I should approach this and how should I differentiate this for a range of learners. So the resources available to teachers were among those documents that we felt were really important to understand, because they are ultimately, good curriculum documents are ultimately meant to be in the hands of teachers, and to offer them clarity about not only the standards, but the application of those standards. So we absolutely make sure that that's a part of what we looked at and did look at.
Did you make any recommendations for how time is considered when rolling in that ability to allow students to grapple with problem solving and whatnot?
We didn't get into specifics about timing, but we did say, and I'm sorry, there's a lot of information here, but one of the recommendations was to more regularly include, I know there's always a balance point between just enough assessment and too much assessment, but opportunities for formative assessment to be able to gauge student understanding. I know, for example, in math, SOAR is one of those approaches, but using that information and strategies to pulse take, where are the students now? And permissions, that's another piece that we recommend, that there be clarity for teachers that because a curriculum's pacing guide may say on week 1, week 3, week 5, we should be here, here, and here. It should be ultimately, there should be autonomy to the degree possible for the teachers to utilize student information and what the assessment on the ground is telling those teachers to be able to guide that pacing. So that is a recommendation. We didn't give specific, weekly or monthly kinds of recommendations because that actually flies in the face a little bit of teachers' autonomy to be able to gather information and to be able to use it to slow down, pick up the pace. And so that was our stronger recommendation, is to be able to make sure that that's clear within those documents.
So,
Thank you so much, Hanover team. We will use this information to, along with other data, to help us drive next steps, how we can continue to grow together. Thank you to the Board of Ed for not only allowing this, but for pushing this audit. We appreciate the work of the Hanover team and everyone who was part of it. Thank you.
We appreciate the transparency of the team and the partnership. Really, we work with lots of districts, and folks were really very open and transparent with us. It was very helpful for our work, and we hope, we wish for only the best for the district, and anything we can do to help support it going forward, please let us know.
thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Doing that larger piece that you mentioned. That there would be a larger meeting to discuss some of the things that I emailed you. You know when that'll be?
We got to schedule it with we got to schedule it with Eileen as to when it's going to be. Chief Shenko.
Good evening, Commissioners. We're going to start with contracts and consultancies for approval from the Office of Human Resources. The first is to revise an agreement with Nurse Corps Management Services, LLC. This contract requires an increase of $15,000 to not exceed now $35,000 through June of 2025. And this is to provide trained nursing personnel on a temporary basis to our schools. And this is coming out of the general fund budget. Next contract is an agreement with Bloomboard Incorporated to provide a unique opportunity for staff to become certified as special education teachers through a full-time project-based residency program from January 2025 through June 2025, an amount not to exceed $190,863.
Hold on, we have a question.
So I noticed that as I was temporary had emailed me back an answer to the question that I had asked earlier. I wondered if this was going to just be for special ed certification, since this is a company that traditionally works on teacher retention, and in different parts of New York has turned around the teacher shortage piece, increased retention, and I'm wondering why we are only looking at them for special education rather than teacher retention, which will also help out HR.
I think we can expand. And I do want to first thank Jordan Ashley, our Executive Director of Recruitment, who's really spearheaded this effort. And I think when we met with them initially, they sort of asked, what is the one area that is of the biggest need? And I think we probably said special education and math. So I do think that there is an opportunity, and Jordan, if you want to add anything, I do think there will be an opportunity to expand this further into another area like math, and that would certainly be like the next step.
But we have a shortage, right? We have every year we have these shortages, this
We do.
company would help us avoid those type
Yes.
shortages with strategies. So I'm wondering why we're only gauging them for special education rather than these large hiring things we get into at the beginning of the year when they can help us with strategy. That's all. Not against it. I'm actually trying to increase it.
First and foremost, I think it goes to the fact that we have to be cognizant of the legal responsibilities we have to go with the IEPs of our students, and that we're out of compliance in many areas because we don't have the staff to take care of them. So that's why it's such a heavy need. I agree, but we also want to make sure that with the complications of state certification issues, we want to make sure this actually works.
But this
So before we
requires,
dive in too far,
I
we need
get
to
it,
make
but
sure it works.
this requires those people going back for bachelor's degrees. That's what it
I
said.
think
That's what,
there's multiple pathways is part of it.
I didn't get the multiple. I got the
Yeah,
bachelor's
there's
degrees,
multiple
tuition
pathways.
payment. So I'm just trying to figure this out because that's a university kind of far away when we have universities closer. So I'm wondering if we're going to take a contract out like that with them, why don't we just expand it to the other teaching needs that we have?
I'm not saying not.
Answer it now.
No,
I'll let him.
I
I'll
don't
let
think
him
there's a-
listen to it.
I don't think there's a one answer though. I think there are multiple ways that we can go about moving this, but whatever we do, the special ed one is our most immediate need. So that's where we are.
And you said you want to make sure it works before we.
You definitely need to make sure it works.
But they have a good proven track record. I guess we can check around with some other districts and especially in Durham Ferry, New York, where they actually used it and came up with a program with Mercy University right in our backyard.
But
So
some of this,
I get it, but
yeah.
again,
some of this happens with
But
New York
again,
City, which you cannot compare
I'm
any
not
other
talking-
district.
I'm talking about Durham Ferry, which is not New York City, right?
Okay.
But again, I'm just saying if we go talk to some other districts that already have them,
We have,
and then they say that they've helped them with retention. I'm just looking at a bigger piece because every year we're talking about teacher shortages in certain
Mhm.
fields and areas every single year that I've been on the board. And it's always been a problem with this certification. I'm glad that you're going ahead and taking it now, but again, we have to be like that in all areas where certification may need to be brought up because this isn't the first or last time we're going to talk about it. So
Okay.
I'm just saying that we
Oh,
need
agree.
to harness someone that has experience in it so that we can get a better handle on it.
State is also looking at alternative pathways for people to get certified. So I think we're all working hand in hand.
I just have a quick question, and if it's in here and I missed it, I'm sorry. For some of our other recruitment programs, we ask that the individuals who go through the program sign that they'll stay with us for 3 to 5 years. Or do we have the same kind of stipulation with this?
Yes, we do. It would be a 5-year commitment.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question. Sorry. For our other recruitment programs, we have a stipulation that if they complete the program, they have to stay with us for a certain number of years. And I didn't see it in here if that was a stipulation for this program.
You said 5 years?
Yep, 5 years.
Mary stole my question.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, so that's from, it can be 198.63 through the general fund budget. Next, our contracts through the Office of Student Support Services. The first one is an agreement with Upstate Medical University to open multiple school-based mental health clinics serving SCSD students and to recruit and supervise diverse candidates seeking initial and/or advanced certification in school-based mental health therapies. This amount is $581,961, and it's through December 2025, and this is going to be paid out of a new grant, a $5.5 million 5-year grant that we got for school-based mental health services. Next agreement is to renew agreement with Coordinated Care Services, CCSI, to provide additional premise zone specialists in each of the SCSD 6 high schools as an added trusted adult presence and provide a universal Tier 1, Tier 2 mental health supports, an amount not to exceed $426,000 through December of 2025. And again, this is going to be through grant, the Student Supports for Mental Health grant. Next is an agreement, an increase of agreement with the Central New York School Boards Association of amount of $5,000, and is to provide additional support to the Department of Student Supports in the Department of Human Resources. The total amount not to exceed now $13,100, and this is coming out of the general fund budget. Next agreement is to increase an agreement with Contact Community Services of $145,431 to provide additional staffing and training for schools requesting more support. This is a total amount not to exceed now $811,431, and this is going to be paid out of the general fund budget.
Chief, I have a quick question on that one.
Yes.
So that it's a significant contract, and it's a big chunk of change on top of a significant contract. And I guess my question is, are the schools requesting more support because it's going well, or because they're struggling to implement?
My understanding is that it's going well and they want to increase the usage of it. We also have a lot of new staff throughout the district over the last couple of years. So this is a way to make sure that they're trained and involved and part of it, so that it's more encompassing in these buildings that they want to expand it.
Okay, thank you.
In the PAX behavioral game, the pieces, I'm a little confused. PAX is in all the schools now? And I thought we were moving towards a training of the trainer where we had someone that would be able to train our staff, so we wouldn't have to be trained by Contact as much anymore, that they would be. Last year I asked the same question. It was that they were going to have someone willing to train our staff to be the trainer, so that we could start to lessen our reliance on their contract or on their duties. So I'm confused. If we're adding people, their contract is getting bigger.
So there was two parts of this contract. The first part, and good evening, everyone. The first part was to add additional SAP counselors at the high school. Regarding the
So you can.
I'm sorry, regarding the PACs, in meeting with Contact, PACs requires the trainers to be trained nationally. So it's not that Contact can train. PACs will not allow that. And so we're really just paying for the provision of the people in the buildings. And there was buildings that were requesting this because they were finding benefit from them. The data was supporting that classrooms were showing increases in student management. And so the request really came from building admin.
In building personnel that are sitting in classrooms and taking data and taking how that data is being collected. And I'm just saying, there's a lot of concerns and complaints coming out of that.
And again, I shared last year that we attended a meeting with some parents that was like, they don't want their children rewarded for bad behavior. So a lot of folks, a lot of the parents that speak about it rewarding behaviors that are unwanted. And I understand what PACS does, right, to try to get a child to turn around. But if we have to, I guess, better explain it to the parents and the people that are receiving it too, so that they don't think that it's like a bribe-based, sorry for that, but like, I'm trying to give you, here, take this apple and just be quiet for me for the rest of the classroom. I'm trying to figure that out, because I didn't realize that we were going to need national dependence on this for the rest of the term of the contract.
Well, and speaking to, the parent piece of it, I'm happy to go or have Contact come and talk about that. But my role as director of mental health and as a school psychologist by training, I can tell you that the model, and I'm not speaking specifically to PACS, but their model follows this kind of framework, is that reinforcement of positive behaviors in small increments is what changes behavior over time. So we're not rewarding negative behavior, we are shaping positive behavior. And it does require a lot of reinforcement to be able to do so. So the model certainly is something that we can talk to parents about to better explain it.
Just a quick question. Is PAC's the one requiring an annual training? Is that what you're saying?
That's the national piece.
And I can get more data and clarification on that. My understanding from the buildings that asked for this, that it was for new teachers. So some of the increases for tonight's purposes were for a building that had a lot of new staff on board and to support the new staff in those buildings.
But is it a requirement for annual training? Like, so people that already had this training multiple times, if there's no updates, is it a requirement for them to continue to have to attend this annual training?
So I guess I would frame it more as a coaching as opposed to training. So they're in the classrooms, they're supporting teachers, they're providing feedback. So it's not a sit-down training is my understanding of that. It's more being in the classroom and supporting those teachers that the building admin are identifying.
And that's the whole, that is what we are paying for, that specific, the training.
We're paying for the coaching. So these coaches are in several buildings of ours. Again, the increase tonight is primarily for one elementary building, but we have coaches in these buildings. They do try to shift the grade levels in the classrooms that they're in, but it is driven by what the building administrator decides in those buildings is needed, and which classrooms need the greatest level of support and coaching.
I think what I'm trying to ask is, in order to use the program, do you have to have the training every year?
I think we all asked that.
Last year it was yes.
I believe so. I mean, I believe that, yes, and I guess I'll get clarification on what that actual training looks like. But my understanding is the training is more of a coaching embedded model where they are in the classrooms. Could a teacher potentially require a coach over 2 years? Yes, that would be the case. But again, I can come back with more information at the next board meeting if needed.
I mean, because this document says the scope of work says the specialist also trains and mentors 2 individuals to be identified by the principals at each site to become the PAC's positive action coaches. So hopefully
there's a lot of different methods to reinforce positive behavior, and I think on a building level, everybody should be doing the similar program, right? Everybody should be on the same page, but I don't know, I think the whole system wide.
This is different. My question is, are we not allowed to do the PAC's model if we don't do this piece? Right. Yep. And we can, correct, we can get clarification.
Last year, the answer was a little bit different. So that's why I'm kind of confused now, because last year it was, they were going to give us a self-sustaining model.
We'll clarify. Thank you.
Next is to renew an agreement with Catholic Charities of Onondaga County to provide a 1.0 FTE bilingual family navigator who will work with the district's school refugee program, the Refugee Mini Academy. This is an amount not to exceed $43,571, and this is coming out of the Refugee School Impact Grant. Next is to enter an agreement with the Syracuse Urban Partnership Program. The Foundation is part of the Restorative Justice Fellows Program, and this will provide enrichment and service learning programming to high school students in restorative practice training through June of 2025. This is an amount not to exceed $50,000, and this is coming out of the general fund budget. Next contracts are through the Office of Teaching and Learning. First one is enter an agreement with the Southern Regional Education Board, SREB, to partner with the district and provide professional development and job embedded coaching at Dr. King teachers on STEM lab creation and the development of STEM integrated lesson unit plans through June of 2025. This is an amount not to exceed $33,200, and this is coming out of the Mike Run Gives grant for Dr. King's school. The next is to renew an agreement with PBL Works, the Bucks Institute for Education, and this is to provide professional development and consulting services to schools implementing project-based learning through June of 2025, an amount not to exceed $352,800, and this is coming out of the general fund budget.
I have a quick question about this one. My first question was last year. I'm wondering how many more projects came out of it with the larger amount of money spent. And then the second question is, I mean, it sounds like this is what, according to the presentation that we just had, you know, implementing project-based learning is something that is needed in our curriculum. But this is a single lesson in 4 grade levels for through over $350,000. We would for the, you know, we need hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lessons, and I don't think that we can pay this much for each one. And so I guess I'm curious about what the approach to scale up creating project-based learning projects in our curriculum will be.
Thank you so much for that question, Commissioner. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
And I can go up. Are you okay with
No,
me answering?
this is great.
Thank you. This actually is in support of us scaling. So we are going to be working with the schools that are focusing on project-based learning, and across all of those schools at those grade levels, we've talked with the principals about pulling at least one teacher at those grade levels along with the content folks to build up to a project, which is across several different lessons, several different units, to see how to make the connection across content areas.
Okay.
So this is really
So the
part of
project
us
isn't-
scaling.
It's not
Exactly.
a lesson, it's a
one.
much larger.
Absolutely. And
Okay.
it digs into the critical thinking. It digs into how you're going to pull things across content areas. So we have, in the past, we focused on providing the support to buildings, specific buildings. Now we're shifting the approach, as I have been across the board, to what are we doing across the district, across those grade levels in those schools, along with central office, teaching and learning and growth content specialist with the teachers, supporting with what's the structure to get to a culminating project so
Okay.
that we can then scale. And we wanted to do it so it wasn't just at one grade level, wasn't just in one building, and it wasn't just at one grade span. So we also wanted to include secondary as well, so that we can build the model. What we realized is we need to provide more deeper support for building that project-based learning as opposed to separate buildings. This is, again, strengthening tier 1, and then will support us with scaling.
And then after this is finished, will those involved be able to then be trained to do it on their own
That's the
next year
plan.
without a contract?
I'm not going to say without a contract,
Uh-huh.
because then we'll see what it will look like scaling. But as I've promised you all, I will not bring anything that's not having the impact. So we'll see the impact. And us
But the
having
goal
things
is to
go
be doing it
through-
ourselves eventually.
eventually.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And then if we expand to other grade levels or pull in different content areas. So that's why I'm not going to promise that we won't have a contract, but I wanted to make sure we were strategic this year as possible with what the support from those folks would look like, and then get feedback from the teachers about the shift and us doing it across a grade level, instead of building by building, so that we can build capacity. We may need support with them for another grade level or to pull in other content areas. So what I don't want to do is pull something before it's part of, like Ms. Capsello said, before it's part of how we do things, and truly building that capacity.
Thank you.
Okay. Next resolutions for the approval of the opening of the Anthony Q. Davis Syracuse Science Technology. I couldn't think about it. Thank you.
Y'all always changing the name on us.
Senior.
Just like that field, don't worry. Always changing the name.
So Central Tech isn't going to be in the name, huh?
No, it's going to be the Syracuse Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Mathematics High School. And I believe that was part of the legislation that went through by the legislatures a year and a half ago, I believe. And so this is a resolution in order to create the name so that we can get a PEDS code so we can start moving forward with the opening of the school in September of 2025.
Ooh, that was a good one.
Everybody's a comedian.
Ooh.
I was like, what? I didn't see that.
Hopefully I got approved.
I had to look at you.
We look real quick like,
Yeah, we look both at you and
I'm sitting here reading, I'm like, wait a minute.
it's not that.
He's going to pay me back for that one.
Definitely.
The next resolution is for the establishment of the ECA Club. It's for this Nottingham High School and is the ECA Club class of 2028. And the next resolution is for Board of Education travel. And this resolution approves the travel for 3 commissioners to attend the National School Boards Association Annual Conference in April of 2025 at a cost not to exceed $9,000. And the next is the monthly financials. You have a PowerPoint where I've detailed everything out for you. I'll just briefly run through that since it's been a long meeting already. The year-to-date revenues are $66.5 million, which is about 11% of our budget. Our expenses are at $133.1 million, which is 22.8% of our budget. And as you know, this time of year, our expenses are always well ahead of our revenues. Our salary expenses are on target. But they are actually 5.5 million greater than last year. This is to the HR department and Scott and his team on filling vacancies and getting positions in there, as well as cost increases in salaries. Benefits, this month benefits are about $3.1 million over budget. We seem to have this fluctuation every other month where we're getting a couple of high cost claims that are bumping benefits up. So we probably hopefully will catch that back down again next month, but we are keeping an eye on how that's fluctuating. Let me see. And overall, it's about $4 million more than it was last year. Charter schools are about 861,000 higher, but that's on budget, so we planned on that. In terms of cash on hand, the district has $147 million cash on hand, so we don't have to worry about any borrowing, which saves the district money in the long run. And our assets exceed our liabilities by $157.9 million. Overall, our expenses are $16.6 million more than last year. Again, that does include $6.3 million that we transferred into their capital so that we could do capital projects. But actually, it's $500,000 below budget. So we're where we want to be at this time of year. And at this point in time, I'm going to mention, because I always do, grant funding is about $7 million higher than it was last year as well. The next is the claims audit report.
Hold on, Mike, got a
Was there
question?
any questions
Yes.
on the?
I was just
Sorry.
gonna ask, will we, as in years past, will we get projections starting in January or February for the financial statements?
I think we're probably looking around February. I mean, maybe we can start in January.
think it's due.
This budget season is going to be a little bit tricky because we're,
Well, I didn't know with the new
There's
system, if we'd be
unknowns.
able to start the projections like we normally have, if that.
yeah.
Okay.
So right now we're working between the 2 systems. So once we get through the year-end audit, we also have the comptroller's office here doing an audit. We have our internal audit. So the next month is going to be a little bit busy for everybody.
Actually, we won't even find out until January what the foundation aid formula looks like.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
So projections on the financials for this year, though, we usually start in we used to start in January, so I wasn't sure if that was still the plan.
So the next item is the claims audit report. There were 4,423 claims. this past month, over $26 million in claims. Our positive rate was 97.7%. So they're doing a good job and doing a lot of volume over the last month, catching up on claims and payments. So I want to kudos to that team. And then the last is the JSCB Phase 3 summary report. Chief DeFlorio is not here, so I'll fill in. The audit, the audit, yeah, the audit was presented to the JSC board the other day, but there was not enough members for a quorum. So that is going to be adjusted to, I believe, the 6th, December 6th, where we're going to have that meeting. And also another note is that the audit committee, because of the audit and all the extra work that's going along with the audit committee meeting will be moved to the 16th of December, so that Bonadil has enough time to put all their financials together for the audit committee to review it and approve of it. And then there's a work session that night on the 16th as well. So if we can get a special board meeting, we can knock that all off in one evening. Anything else? Any questions?
Thanks, Mike.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thanks, good.
Guys got any committee reports?
There's a policy committee meeting tomorrow, 12 noon, this room. Please join us.
You got anything else? Well, all right. I guess this work session is adjourned. Are you ready?
I said, oh, he saved that.
It just popped into my head and I started seeing it.
I need to go taste
Like
it
they
again.
responded. I was like, oh, did I?
It's cool.
It's like, do I have a tag?